So I'm based in Buffalo, New York, which is near Niagara Falls, for anyone who's like familiar with the natural wonders of the world. And I host an event called Freelance Buffalo. So for the last 4 years, I've hosted an event similar to this with talks and things. And amongst that, I ended up opening, or in the process of opening, a co-working space. So really, like, just super passionate about helping freelancers and pushing our communities forward. From where I sit, it seems like Europe is like further along in those things. In my area, even just compared to big cities like New York, Austin, Miami, and Denver, we're pretty far behind. So I'm kind of that, I like to be that like catalyst person who's kind of pushing forward the education and the knowledge and what freelancing is, how you can get started, and then other businesses, corporations and things, and how they can work with us. So it's really important to me. But along with that comes value-based pricing. So I would love to hear what your interpretation of that is. So if you want to put that in the chat, like if you're just like, I feel like value-based pricing should be this. I'm not sure, like what your level is on it. So if you guys want to throw that in there, that'd be great. If not, it's fine. But for me, I was working by the hour for a long time. So I've been freelancing for almost 10 years. I was working by the hour for a long time, and I won't use any numbers because dollars and I think our currencies are all different. But for a monetary amount per hour, it didn't really make sense. It just doesn't make sense to have to track your hours and put, a monetary amount on your time. Like that's not how we live our lives, and it shouldn't be how we live our lives and track different things. So yes, you guys are correct. So project-based pricing, value-based pricing. Yes. So Anna, thank you. What do you mean? You're like, oh, I'm looking forward to being here. You nailed it. So value-based pricing is about solving the client's issue and how much it's worth for them. So that's something where I feel like people really struggle. So a couple of things. So you guys already know, hopefully, and if you have questions about this, happy to answer offline. Like building your brand, finding your niche and what you do, setting your regular rates is really important. So yes, it's important to have an hourly rate. We all need to know, like, okay, it comes down to brass tacks, like what's your amount per hour? And I found my first step in that was building a list of accomplishments. So I wasn't, when it comes to pricing in general, I wasn't necessarily confident in pricing myself where I deserved to be. So I had a mentor that was working with me say, write down a list of all the things you've ever done. Write down a list of, all the things that you're proud of that you've worked on in your professional career or even like in high school or college that make you who you are and why you're so good at what you do today. So I ended up writing that list down. Like I was in the Macy's Day Parade. It has nothing to do with work. So I was in the Macy's Day Parade. And then that was like a fun, like life-changing thing, not related to work. But when I did get into the workplace, I had perfect compliancy when I had my full-time jobs before I went freelance. I fundraised over $100,000 3 years in a row for a not-for-profit I volunteered for. I opened a nail salon in 2016. So I started building this list of things that I thought were awesome. And then of course, I moved into like marketing accomplishments and, organizing my event, sitting on certain podcasts and what those podcast topics were. So the point of that list was to get me confident in saying, yes, I charge this much an hour. Like that's who I am and I feel good about it. And I've helped others do that too. So in my coaching, I have other people make this list. And then after they make it, same thing, like when Anna was introducing me, I'm like, this is awesome. Like that person sounds awesome. Like she's awesome. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. We need to remind ourselves to kind of feel that way. So I know it sounds kind of silly, but making that list of accomplishments is huge because it helps you kind of just believe more in yourself and build that confidence as far as setting your rates in general. But then you use that as your baseline. So for example, when I create some pricing, and I'm actually going to send Anna and Alina this sheet. I want to cater it to you a little bit as far as services go. I have it set up for a marketer right now, but I have a sheet that, when you're pricing out different clients, you can use a basic hourly rate. So, you can say, okay, it costs this much money as if you guys want to put like a general amount, like what's a general freelance amount in your money? Because mine's like, it's like $25 US an hour, which, is the like bare bones bottom of everything. The goal is to kind of be, between 75, 150, 200, things like that. So that hourly rate that is worth your time. But then when you're thinking about a service and who you're trying to work with, I know that it can be difficult coming up with predetermined packages for certain clients, especially I feel like in what you do, and you'll have to forgive me. I'm not a pro in software development, but I'm pretty sure, you still have those things. Like in anything, you have your introductory conversations, you have, once you land the client, you have, your onboarding, your kickoff conversations, brainstorming, ideation, all that stuff. And then you jump into the actual projects. So when you understand like what you need to do for a client and write that down, you do have a general idea of how much actual time that's going to take you. That's super duper important. But then really adding in your value, like how long have you been doing this? Who do you know and what's your team look like? If you have a team that helps you, like that's your value. Having that base amount of money, that you use, and then adding your value into it, which is not tangible really. So you just have to remember and keep track of those things to create that value. So I would love to give an example if I can. Does anyone have like a pricing or something that's happening right now? Like they're working with a client that they maybe want me to work through with them. And I know I didn't ask this before or anything. I didn't ask you to bring it with you, but if anyone's kind of working on that, I'd be happy to walk through it.
I know. Let's say you build a website for $1,000. Is that something, a presentation website for $1,000?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay.
With?
Perfect. When I think software, I keep thinking about apps. So I appreciate that. I forget that it's, websites too. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. I'll use websites. It's so easy. So say, if you build a website, right? And you say, okay, it's like $1,000. But by the hour, I'm just going to do some quick math really quick. So I want to make sure I get this right for you guys.
And
I'm a marketer.
30 hours or so, let's say, just a simple plain website. So yeah, or even less.
Does that leave you like 30 an hour? Okay, fair.
Yeah.
So if you had a client and if you've done websites for a long time, you guys can kind of get an idea of how long you've been doing them, how long it takes you to get them done, and what your skill set is to help you get them done faster. So having your hourly rate super important. So say yes, it takes you 30 hours to do this site, but that 30 hours is efficient and there's a reason you know how to do this. So I would highly recommend kind of looking into it and adding in that value. Like for example, with me, I can actually go off of this. Like I've had $1,000 projects where I'm like, okay, it technically will take me this amount of time, but it would take the client that amount of time. And we have to start getting comfortable, and you can start slow. We have to start getting comfortable pricing them at the value it brings them. Like how long or how much time am I saving that client? How much, I don't want to encourage anyone to go too deep into it because of course, if you build an e-commerce website, you're not going to have a piece of the pie every time they sell something. But do realize that e-commerce websites, of course, they're going to be more integrated. They're going to be more difficult to create. And the value for that client, like how valuable is that website to them? If they don't have an e-commerce website and they have, a brick and mortar store, they're losing a lot of money. So they need that piece. So yes, the hourly amount is super important, but to think in your head how much value you're adding for them is also important. So it's hard to do it without numbers, but like if $1,000 sounds like nothing for a website, websites over here, go way more than that. But is that like a normal amount there? No.
No,
Okay.
for
What's
an
like a
e-commerce.
normal?
Yeah, no,
How
for
much
an
like a
e-commerce one, it's not.
right? So like
But you
what's
can
a
go higher for an
okay?
e-commerce one.
Like what's a like high, medium, low like amount for websites over there?
7,000 to 15,000.
Okay, so it's the same. It's the same. Okay, yeah. So like basic websites, like you can get something done for 1,000 for 1,200. But like if you're looking for something good, it's probably like 10 to 15,000. If you want something coded like that or more. Um, and those prices are right on. But the biggest thing, so you can kind of think about that and think about where you're comfortable. Because something I learned about being a freelancer, right? Like yes, we're really good at what we do, but we're not all necessarily salespeople. Anna and I are in marketing. So, we'll like sell ourselves and sell what we do all day long. But some people, and I'm sure some of you here included, don't like or don't want to sell. And that's why, I kind of create this list of like, hey, these are things and why you're awesome and why it should be easier for you to kind of talk about this. But when it comes to the package pricing, do that. Create in your own head, like, how long will this take me times my hourly rate? That's my bare minimum of what I think this is worth. And then if you look at this company and if they have a bigger budget, up it, because if it's a bigger company and they have a bigger footprint and, they have a budget, up it, but to a point where you're comfortable. Because I also know as a freelancer, it's, you don't want to feel like you're taking people's money, for nothing. And I get that. And that's why I want everyone to build this confidence in finding a happy medium on a number and a proposal that they're comfortable with. Right. So maybe, your minimum to create a website is $2,000, something super easy, whatever. But if you find this client that wants like this high end e-commerce site, you're going to write down everything that they need and want, the things that you'll recommend to them. And then use your hourly as a baseline and how long it takes, but then add value. So say if, for e-commerce, it's like $8,000 for just the straight time that it'll take for you to create it. But if you have experience creating that site, just knowing what's supposed to be on the page is of value to that client, because that client doesn't know what needs to be on the page. If you've been doing this, like, you're already adding value just by being there. So, add time and value for that. And honestly, a really easy way to do it is to just double it. Like, I just double it my hourly. If it's something that's really in depth, and say, for example, I charge 75 an hour and I'm working on something that's, maybe social media strategy or business strategy as far as like outreach, and it's a lot, and I use a lot of my experience, and it's something that they 110% would have no idea how to do without me. I'll double it. I'll be like, all right, 150 an hour times the amount of hours that I think that this project is going to take. And that's the project rate, and then sometimes if it's too high and you're not necessarily comfortable sharing that, or like sharing at that rate immediately, then like bring it down a little bit, take 10% off, take 20% off, and kind of see if that helps you. But if you are doing that, and if you're bringing the rates down when you are proposing, and I know this is a whole other topic, remember to like offset. So say you have a client and $12,000, right? So it's $12,000 to build a site, and you're like, oh, that's like so much. Like, I know that it's right, but we still have to feel good about it in our hearts. So maybe if you 10%, if you're like, okay, I want to give them a 10% discount. If you do that, and I know this is your contracts, but if you're going to do that, potentially see if you can get, because with websites, I know sometimes you do like 50-50 pricing or something, but some clients, they'll pay up front, to get more money off. And for us, it's like what they're reserving is our time. So however they want to do that, money is usually the best way. So if you're, bringing down a price because it's where you're comfortable at, make sure you're serving yourself and giving yourself something else. So whether it's a larger deposit or getting paid up front, or, breaking it into 3 payments instead of 2. So you're getting paid, on the front end, in the middle when they see the draft, and then, at the end. However you want to break it down, but just remember that there has to be more benefits to it for you if you're giving up any of that value, just until you get more comfortable. So I hope that makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit in here. Adding value to your pricing. I'm just going to read this really quickly. And you can come off mute, that's fine. Okay, so do you have any tips on adding to the value of your pricing in the first 1 to 3 years of freelancing? What do you suggest for people starting freelancing? 100%, I recommend research. Find the people. So you're already off to a great start. Find the people that are like you and ask questions. When I started off, I was really like the only person that did what I do. But then over time, there were people kind of coming along that are like, okay, yeah, I'm doing social media too, or I'm doing ads too, I'm doing marketing too. Um, find out like what they're charging, what their backgrounds are. There are calculators and things on the internet. You can always use, if you had a full-time job before you went freelance, you can always use that as an example. So, and again, this is just numbers, but say if you made 60,000 annually and you moved the decimal and you wanted to make $60 an hour, starting out, do that. So if someone was making $30,000 a year, they start off at $30 an hour. That's a really easy way with almost no justification way to just pick a number, because I know sometimes people just need to start somewhere. But when you're first starting out, you still have experience. There's a reason you're going freelance. There's a reason that you're doing what you're doing. So pick a rate and a number that you're comfortable with. Don't get stuck thinking that, oh, I'm new, I've never done this, I'm a brand new freelancer, I need to charge, this. And it's like the lowest rate you can think of that, you can make it by. Like, no, like I said, create that list of accomplishments and be like, all right, this is who and how, this is my education. This is what I've known. These are the projects I've worked on, whether they were projects you worked on in college or, side projects that you work on for fun. It doesn't matter. That still adds value to what you do and who you are. So you can start off, and I'll be completely honest, I probably started off in social media just doing an hourly rate. It was like 25 an hour, and this is how long, like, it takes me to do X amount of posts. So, every month it's going to be like $200. I'll be honest. I think I charged somewhere like $200 a month for social ages ago. And when I ended up stopping to doing social media for other people, my packages were anywhere between like 800 and 1200 a month. So that was just, for 6 years, like just kind of growing and adding value over that time, because I ended up, excuse me, I ended up integrating a software. I ended up being really good at setting up pages. I knew how to run analytics better. All those things that I was providing for my clients that I could do in almost the same amount of time as when I first started off, but I was better. So that's kind of how I started adding value over time. If you have a specific question about it, or like you kind of going, anyone here, really, if you're going through anything, feel free to reach out. I think Anna's going to share my contact information, and I'll leave my email and all that good stuff. But if you're kind of working through it on your own and you want someone to bounce the ideas off of, definitely reach out to me. Because as much as I love this talk, it's one of those that's just so vague that I'm like, all right, it's more about the feeling. It's more about learning like a method on trying to find that number that is your value, but also something that you're comfortable at. Because I just found that, being in freelance, like we call all the shots, but that makes it 10 times harder. And I guess I'll end it with negotiations and networking, right? So when you create these new numbers and these new packages, if you're creating packages, or while you're creating proposals for different potential clients, go high, go high, go for what you really think what you really believe in. Go for a number you feel confident and strong at, and, stand strong with it. I know that sometimes when I'm working with people, I hit them with a number and they're, maybe physically not able to make that type of a budget, but I like that client. I don't know about you, but in software, but for what I do, I like to work with people that, I actually like. So sometimes, like I said, I'll be like, all right, well, if you can't work with that number and this is the number you're working with, we'll find something in the middle. And, maybe we do a bigger deposit or something. I want to see that kind of camaraderie and just that going back and forth, not in a pain in the butt kind of way, but more of a, like, I respect you kind of thing. So it's really important. And then also just remembering to leave space. There were plenty of clients that when I raised my rates, 3, 4, 5 years into freelancing, I raised my rates and they didn't stay with me. They were like, no, like I only can pay what I was paying with you before, blah, blah, blah. It's super important to raise your rates because you're learning every single day. And I can tell you, I learned far more working freelance in all the different areas that I've worked in versus working at the same job for maybe the last 10 years. If I did that, I'd be really good at that job, but I wouldn't have learned all the other things that I've learned. So raising that over time is really good. And then I guess it's really just leaving this here is just networking, leaving space for them. So if these people, are saying that they want to leave and they're not, ready to pay any increases, don't get discouraged. Every single time I've lost a client based on a price or a rate or whatever, even if they were a higher retainer client. I've had $5,000 a month retainer clients leave or the contract ends. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do now? Like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to, and you try to prepare as much as possible, but sometimes it's still a lot of money to replace in your income. But every single time that's happened, a bigger and better client came into the fold. And it wasn't just someone monetarily that was like, yeah, like that number's good. Like, let's go, which was amazing because I'm like, wow, I don't have to fight for pricing anymore, which is so good. But also they were really good clients. Like I just really loved working with them. And it's about causes and projects that I'm passionate about. I would encourage those of you who are going to vote for per hour to explore projects. In the first couple, you might not nail it. You might be like, okay, I'm going to do this website and I'm going to do it for 6,000. And maybe it was a $10,000 website and you messed up, but that's okay. You need to know, you need to test it out, because it's a different pitching process. It's a different sales process. And another thing, when you're pitching value-based pricing, and it's more important to lead with the value because then it'll be easier for them to say yes to the number. So for example, I have a proposal that puts my bio in, like Anna was saying earlier, talks about my background and what I've done in the past and how I connect to that specific project and like that's all like salesy stuff and like creating proposals. But value-based pricing needs to be led by value-based proposals. So you need to be giving them all that value up front. So then when you come to the end and you're like, okay, I'm going to give you X, Y, Z. These are my deliverables for this amount of money. They're like, yeah, 100%. Like you sold yourself before you gave them that number. And you're not, and we're not as a community of freelancers putting an hourly rate on our time. So, and I know some clients have to be like that and you have to kind of put estimates on those things. But we all really, honestly, I don't know about you, but I hate tracking time. It's like the most annoying thing of all time. Really, like having to track time and use Toggle or whatever you're using to track it, or, making your best guess. It's annoying and difficult. And like, it's just not worth it. You want to just be held accountable to the projects that you're working on, the deadlines that you have. So that's really more important. Well, this is pretty even, like all across the board, you guys. It does depend. It mostly depends. And sometimes if you end up charging by the hour, you guys, and you have to track it, charge more. That's like my whole thing is I'm always going to tell you to charge more, whether you're using value-based pricing and adding more money, because 100% we all could charge more for what we do. It's just the way we work. It's being a freelancer. We are setting our own prices and we don't value ourselves like everyone else does. So just if you can kind of remember that as you're creating your pricing, kind of take yourself out of your own body and look at it and be like, okay, how much is this person worth? Because I'm sure like in this group, you talk to each other and you're like, wow, Astrid, you're so good. Like, that's what you charge. Nah, you need to charge more. Like we need to talk like that to ourselves more often.